Hey booktubers, it's Ashley at Bookish Realm and I am here with another video. Yes, you will probably see me in the same tank top for the next few videos because I am filming in bulk. I don't have time to film every day, so I need to film in bulk. And so it is happening. Alright guys, so I am here with a discussion video. This has kind of been rattling my brain for a little while, and I wanted to do this discussion and kind of get everybody's minds going about the difference between comic books and graphic novels. Because as I've watched videos after videos, they are quite frequently used interchangeably, and that is okay, but they are two distinct things. They are not the same thing. Graphic novels and comic books are not the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of give my perspective on what the difference is between a comic book and a graphic novel and a format that you can get each one in. And if you have any other questions, I will allow you to go ahead and pose them down below in the comment box so I can answer some of those questions for you. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so what I've noticed, and even in myself sometime, and I've had to do a lot of background research, is I've seen people, and myself included, use the term graphic novel and comic book interchangeably. Now, while this is something that is a commonplace, graphic novels and comic books are not the same thing. So even though we like to call them the same thing, they are not the same thing, okay? So I'm going to show you some examples of the difference between graphic novels and comic books and how they can easily be confused and made into interchangeable things when they're really not. So let's start off with a graphic novel. A graphic novel is a form of book that has been written in um, a picturesque type of form, for better terminology. So what you see instead of a book full of words is actually images as well as spouts of words along with those images that tell a story. Now you do see the same thing in a comic book, but the major difference between a comic book and a graphic novel is that a graphic novel is not usually serialized over a long period of time. In this one book, you have a middle or a beginning, a middle, and an end. It is one major story arc. It is not spread over a long period of time. If the author decides to put out a second or a sequel version of this graphic novel, it in itself will also include a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is one single story arc. Now, in opposition of that, here is what we have, or what we call a single issue comic book. Okay, so a comic book, and the difference between this comic book and the graphic novel that I just showed you, although they both contain a story in the form of pictures and words and maybe color or black and white, you cannot get the entire story of whatever you're reading about characters or place or whatever in this one single issue. Okay, you only get a piece of a story. Typically comic books are serialized over a long period of time, and they include multiple story arcs. In this one single issue, you are not going to get a beginning, a middle, and the end. You may just get a corner piece of the beginning and something as simple as introduction to characters and the introduction to a plot. So by reading this, I don't get the whole story behind Faith. Whereas when I held up Still I Rise, once I read this from cover to end, I do get the entire story unless the author decides to come up with a sequel. Another difference between the comic book and the graphic novel is that in a lot of times you will see that comic books contain quite a bit of advertisements, sometimes towards the middle. Sometimes the advertisements are actually in the middle of the comic book. Depends upon how it's formatted and what company is actually putting out the comic book. Now, here's where I think a lot of us get confused about the difference between comic books and graphic novels. When we see comic books or comics bound up into forms like this, we have a tendency to call them graphic novels. I don't see this as a graphic novel, and if I am wrong, please correct me, okay? This to me is still a comic book. All this is a bind up of several different issues into what we call a trade paperback form. So it is now issued into volumes. So it is in a graphic novel format, but this is still a comic book. In this single volume, I still do not have a beginning, a middle, and end, meaning a whole entire story, and then that's it, and this is the end. A lot of comic books combine all of their issues over anywhere from 3 or 4 volumes, and I've seen it all the way up to 22 plus volumes. And it's a lot more complex. I feel like graphic novels are a little bit more simplistic in terms of their plot lines as far as their beginning, their middle, and ends. Whereas comic books can get extremely complex. A good example of this is Fables. Fables is a very complex comic book series that has 22 volumes and I think well over 150 different single issues, as well as several spin-offs. So the world complexity behind Fables is going to be much different than the world building behind a graphic novel such as The Still I Rise. All right, guys, so that was just kind of my small discussion on what I think the difference between a graphic novel and a comic is. I know we often use the terms interchangeably, but we have to remember that they are two different things and they do serve two different distinct purposes, although they both are written with pictures and words and are a great way to escape from our traditional format of a book, especially when we read books that are rather dense. There are other forms of comic books and graphic novels, especially what we consider to be manga. It has a form of Japanese comic book, which is serialized over a lot of different volumes, whether that is maybe 10 or something like One Piece, which is like 70 something volumes. So that was just my exploration. If you have any comments or if you want to add anything to this video, please let me know in the comment box below. As always, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. As always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.